Chris Thomson, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm really thrilled to be sitting across from you today.
Well, super excited to be here. And yeah, this is an exciting podcast to do. Very
Yeah, well,
personal. Yeah.
personally, full disclosure to everyone listening, Chris is one of my oldest friends. Chris and I have known each other ever since the day I started my first business, and I joined his student painters at the time management program. And since then, he's rebranded under Student Works. He's grown, and I contend that he's created more entrepreneurs in Canada than anyone else through this program, and I'm lucky to be one of them. I was also lucky enough that in that experience, sitting in that room in a nondescript Ramada hotel on the edge of Toronto, I found a great friend who I can't believe I haven't had you on before. So I'm excited that this is the moment that we're doing this. Thank you, Chris.
Me as well. And again, it's mutual. It's fantastic how our relationship has grown and developed. Yeah, you're very, very dear to me. So thanks for all your
Likewise.
support.
And you shared, so it is no surprise that sitting across from someone as powerful and personally connected as we are, you would share a very different napkin with me. And I'm honored to have this conversation with you because I was, I've been there since near the beginning of this journey. Your napkin reads, "Cancer is a journey." Why did you share that with me?
Yeah. So it's just some background. Well, I'm 3 years and a few months from when I first found out that I may have cancer. So, so I wanted to. I've been encouraged by a number of my really amazing wise friends, including you, to share my journey more broadly. Um, One of the things we've talked about is the fear of other people's opinion, and a lot of times people think that that fear of other people's opinion at a certain level of success, how could Chris have any sorts of concern of a fear of other people's opinion running, this massive business and having this enormous uh, success and all this sort of stuff, and yet still, it is just human to fear other people's opinion. And one of my really wise friends shared that one great way to break it down is to actually think, whose particular opinion am I concerned with about sharing my cancer journey? And whose particular, and then you start naming people that you know. I know hundreds of people. And I start thinking of people who I would be fearful of me sharing my journey and them having some type of negative interaction, negative reaction to it. And I could not think of what. So, for me, I guess it was about me, and it was about my concern that, what gives me the right to share about my cancer journey, right? What gives me the right to share about my cancer? Why am I so important? And I contend I am not so important. I contend the reason I am here sharing is because one of the things I found when I started this cancer journey is I knew really not a lot of people who had cancer. Um, well, and not that many people, and most of the people who did had cancer and died. And that there really weren't a lot of examples for me about people who had cancer and lived on. And the stat that I pulled up on Gemini is 46% of men over 60 in Canada have cancer or have had cancer. So this is not a small thing. This is a big thing. So I wanted to share to have people understand, have people, and maybe they can have some takeaways. And certainly the things I learned were very valuable to me in my journey.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for this because one of the things that I admire about you, Chris, is you're a real student of life. You're a student of all things. I mean, you like to really get into things and understand them to a place where you can explain them. And it takes you time to do that because understanding it thoroughly involves investigation and introspection, assessment and trial and error. And you go through all those iterations before sharing it. And for years and years, you rebranded your title as head coach within your company, and that's the role you play. So it, I think you take seriously the idea that you learn before you teach, but also in teaching, in sharing, there is growth, there is learning that you do in that, and I think that it's amazing for me to see you move to that next place in this journey where you're sharing and that will help you even build a greater and deeper understanding of what you've gone through. And I'm proud to be there beside you through this. So let's talk about what happened. And I want to set the clock for people because podcasts are evergreen and dates and times kind of get ambiguous. But it's 2025 now. It was 3 and a bit years ago that this happened. So we're talking about 2022, and that's 2 years off of COVID. COVID has just happened. We're still sort of in the throes of COVID and just barely coming out. Business has been through a lot of turmoil. Now you get this news.
Yeah.
Tell me how
Yeah.
you got that news.
Well, even before then, I think it's important because this is one of the takeaways I got as well is we've been doing, really serious health inspections, with Medcan every 5 years. And then I moved to Deerfield's clinic in Mississauga. And so one of the most important things about your health, I believe, is no, you do not want to be surprised by your health. You want to have every opportunity to make a shift, find out what's wrong, and have the incredible medical practitioners in the world help you get over it. I went to Deerfields, was expecting another amazing review, which in a lot of areas was an amazing review. And they told me, this was May of 2022, they told me in late June of 2022, you have a large mass around your bile ducts and liver. And it was a grapefruit size mass. And so that was our long weekend of 2022. They said, don't freak out. And that's really difficult. That's really difficult, not to freak out, not to, what is this? And then, we had a blood test after the long weekend that I went and did to get more information. They went and reached out to next steps. And so then I found myself doing what I do in my business life a lot, and that's networking. And so I didn't know any medical people. I didn't know doctors. I know entrepreneurs, like I know salespeople, I know leaders, a lot of entrepreneurial leaders and lawyers, because my dad was a successful lawyer. But all of a sudden it was like, hold on, no, I do. My son-in-law, orphan's brother, is a doctor. We hadn't really met at all, and so all of a sudden, imagine your future, brother's father-in-law is showing you this enormous mass, and he's in London or Manchester, and he's working through what this might mean. Okay, and it's not good. It's this mass is all tangled up around the bile ducts, and it looks like surgery is not going to be possible because it would just be too difficult to cut in and around all these sensitive areas. So it certainly didn't look promising, but that was one of the things that we did. And then I guess the next really significant situation was Medcan had us, or sorry, Deerfields had us into Princess Margaret Hospital to one of the leading liver surgeons in the country, and he told us that he believed we had, or I had, the working diagnosis. That's not what he said. I believe you have cholangiocarcinoma. So cholangiocarcinoma, which is a word I never heard and really find it hard to pronounce, but it is likely 12 to 18 month death sentence. People who get cholangiocarcinoma don't live long. Very, very few people do live very long. And so that was what he said that I had. Now, one of the key things that I learned going through this process was do not buy the working diagnosis. Okay, because that's what it is. When a doctor says that we think you have, they're just saying what they think you have. And by the way, he said, we think you have, and the only way to confirm our diagnosis is with a biopsy. So, um, one of my great friends, Wendy Porter, she ran one of Canada's largest clinical trial companies for 18 years. She said, well, Chris, there's just an island. You have to get to the diagnose island before you can talk about treatments or surgery or what you're going to do. And you're just lost, but that's just what you are. You don't know what's going on until you're at that next point. And so when he shared that with me, there was, remorse, fear, sadness, tears, but that's where we were.
Yeah, and I think there are some really important things in what you said, and I don't want to run over them. But number one, you did do regular health checkups.
Yes.
Every, you take health very seriously, and if you're just listening and not watching, Chris is in great shape. He's always taken good care of his body. He's always made sure to to eat good food, drink properly. He takes care of himself, and these health checkups, concierge medical health checkups, are part of that routine. You go from one year to the next where you have a clean bill of health, like you said, expecting that all the time,
Yeah.
and the very next moment you've got this large mass, not
Yes.
small, large mass
Yeah.
that has essentially come out of nowhere. And was so this is an important thing for people to understand that this can happen quickly, right?
Yes.
Life can change very quickly, can
On a dime. Yeah. On a dime. And so, and having that information earlier, because when I sat down with Dr. Sapasochin, he's looking at me like, how are you like this? No one, and I should say no one, but very rarely does someone come in with an enormous mass and it isn't impacting them. So this mass was not doing apparent damage. And one of the things that happened over the next number of months before they were able to find a the diagnosis, the doctors kept saying, "Are you okay? Do you have this symptom or this symptom or this symptom or this symptom?" Because they kept being so surprised that I was okay. But that's fantastic because what ended up being cancer, that cancer was not hurting my body, which is huge.
that's gigantic. Um, Now let's talk about this working diagnosis. I think we abdicate a lot of responsibility for advocating for our care. So there's abdicating and advocating in the same sentence, which can be confusing. But we give up a lot of responsibility for that when we go into the healthcare system, and we hear things like "we think you have," and we conflate that to mean you have.
Yes.
This is what's going on. Definitively, we know this,
Yes.
and that's not what they're saying all the time, is it?
No, and it really is important. Like, now they at least I've seen this a number of times with serious diagnoses in my life or for loved ones. They say we think you have, and again, it's important that we pull it apart. And that's not what they're saying. This is what we think you have. It is not a diagnosis. A diagnosis is here's all the data, here's all the background. I've had other people, other amazing doctors check this. It's gone to the board, the tumor board they have to make sure that this is what it is. That's not what it is. And they need a working diagnosis. And just another piece of information that I didn't know, but really the worse working diagnosis you have, the harder they are going to work for you. Okay, and that doesn't mean that our incredible medical professionals don't work hard already, but they are going to prioritize you and prioritize you and prioritize you because you have something that can kill you. Okay, so the worst thing a doctor ever wants to do is give you a working diagnosis that is not the worst possible one, and then there's something that kills you, and they could have done something. So they want it to be the worst. Where so a lot of people think, oh, you would think, why would I say this? This is so unlikely, or whatever. No, they want the worst one so that they're racing you through the medical system as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's really um, really important to understand. And Wendy Porter's advice to you, which was don't believe the diagnosis, and she like that was instrumental. And going back as well, I think she even encouraged you to get more working diagnoses. The more diagnoses, the better. And so let me ask, what did that do for your psyche? Because I believe when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes.
Yeah,
And there was a moment when you came out, and I remember the moment where you came out of that working diagnosis, which was just a diagnosis in our
yeah,
minds at the time,
yeah,
that there was a year on this,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and there was a fuse that had been lit. So, what did it do to your psyche to shift from that perspective? And did you shift from that perspective?
Yeah, so certainly at times, like one of the things and again, you're not really. Sorry, I can't imagine being human without not shifting. So yeah, we share tears together. And I share tears with other loved ones and family members, and many with Helen, my partner and wife, and so um, so and at a certain point to me that there's not value in that. So yes, I totally looked at those the fact that hey, I may only have a year to live. One of the things, the term get your decisions in order. What's the term?
Affairs in order,
Get
yeah.
your affairs in order. So we did that. We updated our will. We made decisions in the business. We had had an experience the previous year where one of our senior coaches on the East Coast had lymphoma, and he couldn't work full time. And on the other hand, he said, "I don't want to not work. I'm ill. I'm not, and so we basically the coach team kind of swarmed around him, and his team got coached by me, coached by Patrick, our VP, coached by other people, and we kept him in. So I had this experience of going kind of a little bit through this, at least in a business way. So we basically disentangled me from the business. I had no more management reports. Um, Thinking, not knowing. But the best thing is don't have a commitment that I can't make. Um, and we advanced my son Devin to become a vice president. We were going to do that already, but we knew that it was time. He is the heir, and will be the heir of the business. But it was the time to do that. So we made a bunch of business decisions to get that in order. We had conversations with the kids, etc., and making people aware. And that's actually an interesting thing. All of a sudden, I started missing meetings with all these medical tests and another medical test and another medical test. And then all of a sudden, people started asking, "What's wrong with Chris? He never misses anything. He's always there." He owns his calendar, and some people started to think, oh, maybe he's got a relationship breakdown, doesn't like me, or just people make up stories. So we had to communicate to the team what we could communicate without because we didn't know. So these are all the different things that we needed to kind of walk through. So there's the fear, the pain, the living in I've only got a year to live, and then the actions that we need to take to support our family, our business, our future finances, all these different things.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to keep in mind. You got a business that's growing rapidly, and
Yes.
you play a significant role in coaching your team in that. And then one day, literally, where did Chris go?
Yeah.
Chris is gone.
Yeah.
Left the building,
Yeah.
and negative energy tends to fill a void, and I think that's what happened. People made that story, filled stories,
Yes.
added conjecture, um, and you didn't have a whole bunch of positive energy to add there, but you had a real story, and that real story was more important
Yeah.
than the made up one because you didn't know what was happening,
Yeah.
but it wasn't about them, and
Yeah.
that changed things, didn't it?
It did, and it's sometimes people wonder, well, I can't tell them because I don't know. Well, no, you can tell them that you don't know. So right now, and I can't specifically remember, but just so you know, right now we're doing some medical tests. We're not aware. I'm super healthy, as you can see, and we're doing some medical tests. So I haven't been as consistent on calls or being able to do interviews because of these. We'll keep you up to date. We're optimistic, of course, and just know that that's what's happening. So that was exactly what was true. Without mentioning the working diagnosis is this, because I don't think that's gonna create any great coaching that week in my business.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really important is just being open with the core team, right? Because they had your back.
Mhm.
Of course, your son and wife and partner being central among those two because they're
Yes.
family and also in the business. But even other close senior team members were in the loop and stepped up to support you. And that's also part of it, right? When challenges happen, we can ask, why is this happening to me, or why is this happening for me? And you've been very, um, not that you haven't taken a moment to feel the emotion of it, but you've also reframed it into an opportunity for you wherever possible. And you've done that consistently through this journey. And I think that was a choice. It was a choice that you had to remake often and on, like literally daily, I think. How
Literally,
did you do that?
yeah. So, um, well, there's a bigger answer as we go along that'll answer, but I think it's regularly reframing. You know, we believe again, why is this happening for me? We believe again, failure. There's no failure. There's no winning. There's no losing. Losing. There's just learning. That's something we talk about a lot in our business, and so again, it's Seneca. One quote I have from Seneca, and it would regularly pop up in my daytimer or my phone. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Like, this is just true. Humans suffer. I suffer more often in imagination than in reality. So, right then and there, we can check in this through the podcast, but right then and there, I was not feeling any pain. I actually, as a result of this, like, my wife had me, like, my diet just got so strict. Like, okay, there's no sugar in the house. We stopped drinking alcohol. There's all sorts of things that I was doing. I was meditating 2 hours a day with Joe Dispenza. Um, and leading this gentleman's had amazing success in helping people align their health and their mindfulness. Um, and just um, really, really being real about what was going on. I had a mass. We don't know what that mass was, and anything else I was doing was making something up. I was not in pain. Live, happily today. Be happy today. Seize the day. We only have one day today. We're gonna have a great day.
It sounds crazy to say this, and I'm chuckling to myself even before I say it, but kind of made up the story that there was 12 to 18 months. That was a made up story. That was a working diagnosis. It was made up. It was
It was totally
imaginary.
made up. Yes, that's right.
Right. Now, like, smart people made it up. I'm not taking that away from
Oh,
them, but it was
very
made
smart
up.
people. Very smart
Yeah,
people.
very
Yes.
smart people,
Yeah.
and people that you trusted all the way through the journey. They made up the story because it was appropriate for the time.
Yes.
So what it sounds like is you just made up a different story.
Yeah. And just to share, like there was a really um, uh, big moment in my journey. My and this happens like this. Another takeaway is my wife and I have been together 38 years. She's my best friend. We built this business together. This business would not be this business and what we're doing without my partner. And so my family obviously wouldn't be without my partner and Helen. And so she took this as gospel. She took this as I am at risk of losing my husband and my best friend, and she was like so all over it with the reading and the medical, reading all sorts of things and assessing, and then as part of it, she didn't have many people to talk to. One of those people were you. One of those people were another really close friends, but she really kept her group of people close, and one of them were the kids. And so I remember Devin coming up, our VP, and my youngest, and he came up to the house and he walked out to me and said, "So what do you think, Dad?" And I know what he meant by "what do you think?" Mom is telling me you're going to die in 12 to 18 months. And I said, "Well, son, we teach this stuff. We teach mindset. It's one of the big things that we do in our program. So I am not going to sit in front of a group, or sorry, stand in front of a group for decades telling this is how you should handle a crisis and then not handle it that way." So I said, number one, yes, it's true that that may be my diagnosis. Right now, I'm healthy. You're up for the weekend. Let's have a fantastic weekend. We're going to make some great steak tomorrow. We're going to go play a great round of golf. We're going to share our love for each other. We're going to have an amazing weekend. And we know this is hanging over our head. But again, like Seneca says, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And so he went, I got it. Okay. Like let's choose what we can choose. Let's choose the power in the moment. And recognize again and I shared that this is a working diagnosis. This is not necessarily what is we're gonna face. And just one other thing, and maybe it hadn't happened by then, but by the fall, there is a gentleman who is still living for years with this diagnosis, the cholangiocarcinoma, and he's gone through multiple bouts of chemo. He skis after them. He is super fit, super healthy, incredibly smart. My wife and I had coffee with him at Princess Margaret Hospital. And why? Well, because my wife set it up. And anybody in the medical profession, anybody we've met with cancer has been so immensely helpful. Giving their time, sharing their personal journeys. So we felt even if we had that diagnosis, we were going to be able to get through it. We were going to be able to model what he had done. And again, we had a running start, remember, Govind, because we had this diagnosis, or sorry, we were looking for a diagnosis before I was sick. So I was
Mm-hmm.
not sick yet. So this was enormously important.
And I think this is, so thinking about cholangiocarcinoma, for people who don't understand, it's a type of cancer that forms in and around the slender tubes, like those little tubes of the bile ducts that carry digestive fluid around. Now, the other thing that is kind of um, interesting, Chris, you're a powerful network, a networker. You have a big network, and I've talked about how you've created more entrepreneurs than anybody else. But one of the things that you do really religiously is that you nurture relationships by giving to them. You're not asking from your relationships that you make. You're looking at every networking opportunity or every person when you're meeting them as what more can I do? What can I give to them? And I think that's an important piece of this because when you leaned into your network, everybody was running
Drop
to,
out.
hey, I know, and hey, did you know, and hey, I have a connection. You felt that support, didn't you?
I did, and yeah, just to put a pin in what you were sharing, one of the most important things about networking is you go into conversations with people about how can I support, what could I do, how can I make a difference. You're listening for, an experience you could share, someone who they need to know because they could make a difference in their lives, and connecting people. That's something that I've really done and love to do. And again, so that's a huge part. And so I remember having this situation, being in this situation, and then of course we reached out, as we said earlier, about we had reached out to my son-in-law's brother. We'd reached out to Wendy, who's in my forum group, or was in my forum group and mastermind, and then we reached out. We said, all of a sudden I was at home at night. It was a Sunday night, and I was talking to Helen. I go, Govind, I think Govind's brother's a doctor. I remember, like, yeah, he's a Raptor season ticket holder. And, just never meeting your brother. And then of course, the internet, Google, and oh no, he's not just a doctor. He is a leading doctor in this space. And so again, my wife has always moved. And so I can't remember, it was like 8:30, maybe 9, and it's not the time I would usually reach out, to my friend Govan. And I was, well, I'll just call him tomorrow. And Helen says, no, reach out now. So anyhow, I sent him a text, and Govan, like, of course, yeah, yeah, I'm free. Let's talk. And that became another incredible resource. Your brother, um, and we had so many times where it was just miraculous how quickly we were able to get a CT scan, an MRI, all these different things that there's a huge backlog, and people in the system put me first. No, not put me first, moved me along. And again, one of the things, of course, is it's it's my working diagnosis for sure. And then there was no question I felt like that there's kind of um, a hierarchy in the medical system of okay, hey, we've got a friend here, this matters, or we've got a family member, that I think just makes a
What you
difference.
appreciate appreciates. So, when you put out positive energy in the world, when you need it, it comes back to you. And I think that this is you, but you also have to be open to receiving it. And you were open to receiving help.
Mhm. Yes,
A lot of people aren't open to receiving.
yes,
They don't think of themselves as worthy. Again, the 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 turmoil that they're facing internally prevents them from being able to receive the help of others. You you are open to receiving it and grateful for it, and I think that that's really important also to recognize that when we are open to receive, we we actually realize there's people trying to help us all the time.
yeah,
Very often we push them away. Speaking of my brother, one of the most powerful lessons I ever learned in my life was from my brother. We were just he was in med school, had no money, and I would be taking him to we love you talked about Raptors games. We were going to Sens games,
yeah,
and I'd always buy the best seats. And we'd go for dinner, and we'd have great seats, and we'd watch the game, and then we'd leave. And one time, just as he started to come into some money, I guess he went to the bar and said, "Hey, what can I get you? I want to get you a beer." And I said, "No, no, no, this is not me. What are you talking about?"
right,
And so I sort of threw him aside almost and paid for the beer, and then he called me an asshole. So why are like what? We're in great seats. We're like, what are you talking about? He said, my big brother takes me to all these games. You do all this stuff for me, and I just want to buy him a beer, and you won't let me. You're an asshole.
yeah, yeah,
So receiving
it's important.
is an important thing. It's
Yeah,
part of the reciprocity of life, and if we interrupt that, then it's disingenuous. So yeah, Shiva, my brother, is one of the top surgeons, hepatobiliary surgeons in the country, and so that's in the general part of your body that you're having this. So I think some conversations with him were useful. Of course, him being a doctor and you being a patient of his for a period of time, I have no idea what you discussed. So
Of course. No, for
yeah,
sure, for sure.
as what that would be. So l- you found help in the system, and I think that was really important. Um, there's another thing that you said though that you said listening for how you can support somebody is really an important thing. One of the things I know that you're really careful not to say is, "How can I support you?" You listen for ways that you know that you can support them
Yes,
and say, "How about I do this for you?"
yes,
Right? And I think that's an important thing. On the other side of it, when you were in need of help, A, you were clear about asking when you had a specific one, but I think it's really important that people understand that coming to you and say, "How do I support you?" is like, I don't know. You're nobody knows how to answer that question. But on the other hand, listening carefully and being curious about where somebody is so that you can offer support is something much more powerful, isn't it?
it certainly is. Like, so both sides of it is as someone who wants to be a contributor in the world. And I think again, contributors are the people who are most successful in the world. And again, after that follows profit. You're making a contribution, profit will follow. But not that we're always looking for that, but that's an okay thing. And then when we're in an opportunity and we need help, being really clear about what we think that help is, so being able to voice that if we can, of course, being open to what they suggest it is. And I think there's no question, you pointed to this before, is bringing good energy. I certainly, one of the things is we are really blessed. I know there's a lot of concerns about Canadian healthcare system. I was really blessed with just the amazing people and the support and the care. um, and there's no question that a lot of times patients don't show great energy. A lot of times they're really struggling, which makes sense. So if you can, it really is an advantage. It really is an advantage. Be grateful, be kind. And it's just good to do that at any time. But it does come back in better care for sure.
Yeah. So thinking about, and we did touch on that reframing yourself in a positive direction and how important mindfulness played a role in it. And I love the way you shared how with Devin, you talked to him and said, "Hey, we're not going to stand on stage and teach this to hundreds of you know,
People
business
every
owners
every
every
year.
single
Yeah.
year and not believe it, not do it in our own moment of crisis."
Yeah.
So, how did you reframe your day? And obviously, you had days that are better than other days.
Yeah.
Some days
Yeah.
were great,
Yeah.
and other days were
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
great. But what
Yeah.
what did that routine look like to reframe your day in a positive direction?
Well, it's interesting as well. Like, and again, I've been, of course, I can't help but listen and read and hear people's stories about their cancer journeys and such. So I didn't do this because I don't know, I thought I should. I didn't do this because, oh, then I'll be able to tell people I should or be the role model I thought I should. Okay. None of those. Okay. I did it because I thought it was the best way to go through this process. And I think it's just the best way to go through life is face the challenges that you have head on. And then, again, not let your head stir to be worse than it actually is. Again, another thing the great philosophers will talk about is, is this pain really, sharp and short? Okay, well then it'll pass. And then it's just kind of plays with the idea of pain is that we hold on to the pain, or we letting the pain go. So for me, it was constantly just letting the pain go. Now, a lot of the pain was just a mental pain, an emotional pain. So it was like, okay, one of the other things I love to say is, hey, father or mother time is undefeated. We only have so long, right? So why me? Well, why not me? Gosh, I've had just an incredible life. I've made all these contributions. I've just, like, I can't imagine me as a 10-year-old looking at me now and saying, you got that life? holy, did you ever do well? Like, wow, is that ever, just so remarkable? So every day I used to start with a 2 hour meditation, or somewhere in the day I do a 2 hour meditation. Trust me, you do a 2 hour meditation every day, your day's going to go well. So, that's something to look at. What
And
am I,
that sounds
what,
daunting to people, right? They're sitting
yeah,
there going, "What are you talking about? 2 hour meditation? Like, how do you do that?" And um, you didn't go from 0 to 2. You
no.
went, you ramped up to it, but you made it important. You made how you treat yourself a priority.
Yeah, and partly is my wife was full on, let's figure this out. And then I had all these amazing medical practitioners that we had networked to, and that we were at one of the leading hospitals in the world. And so I'm not going to be able to figure that out. I'm a coach. That's not my space. But so I was more than aware that I had the resources to support me. So what was my job? My job was being the healthiest I possibly could for potentially the fight of my life. Okay. So that's what I felt. So it was like, okay, just fitness and diet and again, meditation is wonderful, and gratitude and practicing all these things was just a huge step forward. I in this journey I actually did more personal development than I had in decades. So I taking the opportunity for this pause, um, to really focus. And again, by the way, of course, I'm blessed that I was able to do this. I was blessed that we built a leadership team that could handle this when I was away, and I could step in at times and do the things I could do, and then I would step back because, well, later on when I was during chemo. But I knew that the team would be fine, and the business would be fine
Okay.
when I wasn't participating.
And so throughout this time, uh, you're feeling well, you're feeling good. The plot thickens, however, right? So you still got this working diagnosis that is being worked throughout this period. And then you're not doing as well as you were at the beginning. You start to feel a little bit off. There
Yeah.
start to become some more concerning symptoms. And, let's say it's in the hero's journey, this is act two.
Yeah. Well,
Because
just
you had some challenges, but then you had some bigger challenges that started to appear that were more physical.
well,
And
why don't we pause? We'll go the next. One of the things that we talked about is to get a diagnosis for this is you need to get a biopsy. And again, sorry, you don't need to get a biopsy. You need to get a biopsy that they actually find what they're looking for. So I had, I believe, 3 biopsies with no results, meaning they continued to say, it's inconclusive. We don't know what you have. And so so there's two things. Number one, that's difficult to deal with. What does that mean? You know, um, and as a layperson, you know, well, I know I remember you sharing with me. Go, well, this is a big mess. Something has to be there. There must be a meaning about this. Something has to be here. But it was it and but it kept coming back unknown. And so that was difficult. In some ways, it would be, I would look at that as a good thing. And in hindsight, it really wasn't necessarily a good thing. It was really not a good thing, meaning, no, I know it was what it was, but it wasn't really what we were looking for. What is this? So then we can actually deal with it, and we can actually use the best medical tools available to deal with this.
yeah, and so that was my intention as well. Let's put a pin in part one here.
Okay.
Uh, let's come back for part two, where we're going to talk about what happened next. Tune in for part two, everybody.